Hi, it's Kevin again from Let Me Tech You. And in today's IT short stories video, I want to talk about a time when a printer basically brought down our entire network. And it was just a little label printer. It was crazy, once you hear how we kind of figured it out and everything, and basically the whole gist of it, it's kind of eye-opening experience on like some of the things that you wouldn't expect to bring down a network, but then also some of the ways you can kind of go about protecting yourself and preventing some of these things from happening. And it happened a couple years ago. Basically, one morning, I woke up, to some text like, "Hey, there's some network issues going on in the plant." And sometimes the plant had problems. We had a plant with a lot of dust and things like that. So you can get issues with some of our switches with dust in it, all types of just vinyl and anything you can kind of think of. So it was like a real dirty environment. But this morning was really kind of different. I was coming in, and then then I get another text. Oh, everything's back up and normal. I'm like, okay, but I'm still coming in, just kind of see what was going on, and now get an analysis of the situations. Because then I got another text. Is like, hey, the network keeps dropping, but everything is going down. Internet, you know, switches, people's computers can't. So first thing in my mind, just from a networking perspective, is hey, some type of broadcast storm going on, or some type of loop in the network that's causing a problem. So a couple of things were kind of going on in my head, but basically, I get there, plug in, trying to see what's going on, and as I'm plugging in, trying to get onto the internet, everything's going down again. Firewall, switches in the plant, switches inside the offices and stuff like that. So I did remember once that we had some issues with some, just to go back a little bit, there's a couple of different devices we had just got that were newer, like some Wi-Fi access points, some Verkada cameras, things like that. So the firewalls were fairly new, so we had just introduced some new stuff into the network, but they've been running for a while, so there's nothing out of the ordinary there that I was kind of concerned about. My thing was like, okay, hey, we do have our switches, our main switches that route back into our distribution switches in our server room, and then those go into our cores. But I was like, hey, none of that's changed. But we do got those dumb switches that plug into a lot of different devices, and I'm like, okay, someone must either accidentally plug something in somewhere, accidentally like put a loop in the network, and maybe it's not detecting it or fixing it automatically on the switch side, the layer 2 side. So I'm thinking like, okay, how are we going to find this? And I did notice that sometime before, earlier in the week, we had some issues with our UPSs, and there was some things with, so basically the thing was uh yeah, so yeah, we was trying to figure out, okay, how we're going to figure this out. And so what I was saying was, okay, let's try to, formulate. I was going to say our battery backups were having a problem with at some point earlier in the week getting the. We were getting a lot of network alerts, like, hey, it was like spamming, like a lot of SNMP type, things I was trying to hit, and we were getting those alerts from, I believe it was our security software. Yeah, so something was like going out trying to like find all these, like it was getting all these weird like SNMP alerts from the actual APC battery backups, because all these like notification things were turned on for various things and alerting. So it was kind of like spamming the network a little bit. So I was like, okay, let's unplug all those, because remember we had that issue a couple earlier in the week, and so let's we get up in the cherry lift, and we start just unplugging those from the network. But as we're doing that, like the network's still going down. So I'm trying to say, okay, those are out of the picture. What's going on? Like, how can I kind of figure out what's like a root cause, or kind of where to look at, because we're talking hundreds of devices. I don't have anywhere to kind of look in. So I'm like, okay, let me jump on a computer. I'm gonna plug in Wireshark, see what's going on. And because if it's hitting all the devices, it's hitting all the computers and or stuff on the network, I'm gonna see the packets, the frames coming in, stuff like that. So as I turn Wireshark on, I'm seeing like the floods all just it's just flying through the system, and I'm starting to see, and so I get enough, just enough of an analysis to kind of see, okay, what's going on now. I'm by no means a expert at Wireshark, but I'm as far as like all the filtering and things like that, I can understand enough to put in the right filters, get what I need out, understand the coloring, run through the different layers and stuff like that. So out of the audit, he already had noticed that there's this one particular IP address that I'm seeing a lot of. Like it's like, hey, who has such and such send to this? I'm seeing all this same message, and so I go in and I look and I'm like, okay, what is that? What is that? And so I'm looking through our IP address scheme, things like that, and it's a printer. It's a label printer. Well, we got tons of these, all over the place, and so luckily we keep good documentation. I was able to take the IP address, see where the printer was, and because I wasn't able to get to it through the interface, which could be because you were having problems with network connections and stuff like that. So I saw that okay, it's in this part of the building, and we always kept like labels on our printers that indicated what IP address it was. So found it in that area, and I was able to unplug it, and that short live stopped the issue. But that's only like part of the thing there. Before we found the printer, I missed told about some of the things we had initially done prior. So we did check some of the switches, making sure that there wasn't like any ports that were like coming up and down, like air disabled and stuff like that. But we were having some problems, staying connected to some of those because they kept, coming up and down. So me doing the Wireshark analysis was able to find the printer, and that worked for a while. But we did ended up putting on like some, after so the next thing was before we get to the adding to the switches, that started working for a while, but then at the end of the day, we ended up having another kind of odd problem. And this one was then coming from like our access points. And I noticed, like, okay, like the access points weren't bringing down the network, but they were bringing down the firewall for some reason, just the firewall. So, like, the firewall, like, internet connection was down, up, down, up. So this was outside of just the whole network coming down. This is just the firewall. And looking at the firewall, I forget the command. I think it's like show something drop. You can show the drop, like what's coming in. I can't remember it from the top of my head, but basically we were able to see like what was causing like a lot of the drop, or incoming packets to cause this particular error on the firewall to then make it like drop off the network. And I seen that. I think we were able to pull some logs and see that okay, it was coming from the access points that we had. So we had reached out to the vendor like, hey, what are these things trying to do? And it probes the network for various telemetry data, I guess you can say, to kind of analyze like, hey, what kind of devices these are, what OSs they're running. So it's like all this like weird stuff, and it's just blasting it out. And we don't know why it started all of a sudden. It was like an anomaly. Like, I was getting questions like, hey, was this because the printer was doing it, or did the firewall cause the printer to, have a faulty NIC that then started just, spamming out a bunch of its, information. So I didn't really know like, hey, maybe the firewall was having or not the firewall, maybe the access points were causing problems with devices, and then the printer just initially started just spazzing out, and that was just kind of like, hey, you know what do we have to do to solve that problem now? So basically, what we ended up doing was what I ended up doing was I had to, and I had to stay over for this because this thing was constantly just bringing down our firewall. What I ended up doing was taking all of our access points, and I believe we had 10 or so, and I ended up VLANing off all the management side of the access points. So basically, those could not talk to like our regular network. Basically, anything management wise was on its own separate VLAN, and it went through that. And all that type of traffic wouldn't broadcast out to its own to everyone. It was basically everything on that network. So that solved that problem. But then we also went back on our switches and we implemented storm control on our interfaces, basically so that we could see like, okay, what what's hitting these, whether it's broadcast, multicast, unicast traffic. If it's coming across on these links, we only wanted to have it hit a certain threshold before it puts it into an air disabled or shutdown state, because we don't want it destroying the entire network. And that was one of the fixes, that we put into place over the course of time, after we had the printer fixed and didn't go back to any other printers having problems. The storm control never really came into consideration, but looking forward, that would have been something. If we would have had, we would have just had that printer go down, and possibly maybe the access points management interfaces that was blasting a lot of the traffic out to like the firewall, it could have also failed as well. So that's one of the different you know issues I've had, where like something so small like a printer was just bringing down our entire network. And just, I think it took us maybe a couple hours to get to the root cause, because obviously I'm going through it faster than what I was actually doing it on foot and by ear, because having to analyze like, okay, which switches do we have, checking all those switches, bringing the switch down and waiting to see if it's still causing a problem, or checking all the different stations in the plant, making sure, because we you have to go around and you're checking all these. Okay, good, 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 everything's good, no loops in the network, no spanning tree loops, stuff like that. So you have to go through all this. So it takes a little more time than what I'm explaining it. But basically, the gist of it was, we got to the root cause using some tools like Wireshark, basic, just network troubleshooting from a layer one, layer two perspective, and just kind of realizing like, what do you have in your network, such as the type of devices you have, anything new introduced, the vendors that you work with, so you can get in touch with them, and also maybe any support that you might have. So it was a good days of work where we had to find a root cause, put in a good safety measure for next time, and go through all that. So I hope you enjoyed that little story there. If you want to check out, like I said, some of the other posts, check out my site, letmetechu.com. I'm talking about cloud networking and automation, different posts about different stuff that I'll put up on here. And if you have any ideas, or if you want to kind of collab and jump on one of these and tell a short story you may have had that caused a problem, or was actually not a problem but a success, reach me out in the comments down below, and like and subscribe, and I'll definitely get back in touch with you. Again, hope to see you next time, and thanks for tuning in.